We found out where all those feet were going. We found out where all those fancy dressed, fancy shoed feet were headed. And they were indeed headed directly to a formal poker table. Now, I wish they had done a pan up from the feet to the head so we could have placed all those feet. Because I still, we don't, ironically, in the video that came out, which, I mean, by all indications is what the feet videos were pointed towards, there are no feet in the actual video. Interesting, no? That there are no actual feet in the promo video that came out. So I'm assuming the Gunther feet were actually Cody feet. As that kind of, because I think we were on the money with the Hokas. We were on the money, obviously, with Brock. I'm assuming that other pair was Roman. Because I don't think Roman doesn't look like he's wearing patent leather shoes. You know what I'm saying? Like for the outfit that Roman is in the video, for him to have shiny patent leather shoes on would be like, really, Roman? You wore your tuck shoes? Which, I mean, you look great and everything. Don't get me wrong. Listen, Big Oos, don't get me wrong. I just wouldn't think patent leather with that outfit. But okay, maybe that's the new thing. I don't know. I'm assuming Cody, who was a little bit, tuxed out, was wearing the patent leather. I guess the fifth set of feet was Hunter. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the hands were indeed Paul Heyman. And Triple H was pouring whiskey. I think it was Triple H pouring the whiskey for Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Brock Lesnar. This is the reveal that we get. A lot of people are going to feel a lot of ways about this. This is the thing about wrestling. If we convince ourselves, I know who's at the table. It's Edge, Chris Jericho, Andrade, and Jon Moxley. Then yes, probably it's not going to live up to those expectations. That's going to be tough to do either way. But this was something that was at least in the list of possibilities. This was something that was rumored. Just yesterday, we were going over the times that all these videos were dropped. The 4/18, multiple videos were dropped at 4/18. I don't think that was a mistake. I think that was for April 18th. Multiple videos were dropped. What was it at 7:42? Is that right? 7:42. Give my man AJ a little love with that button. 7:42, which I think also on purpose for WrestleMania 42. I think that is that is where that lands. But I think so I do think that this was always in the realm of possibility. But when we speculate wildly, it's also the funnest thing to do is to go as far off the ranch as humanly possible and then try to wind your way back. I think that this is a good lesson to make sure that no matter how wildly we speculate, we also keep things in line. Because the fact is that even without a War Games team being announced or Tony D'Angelo inviting Brock Lesnar to his restaurant, as was Susumu's prediction, or any of the other stuff, the idea that they got CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar, Triple H, and Paul Heyman legit in a room together to film this thing is pretty wild. Like I would love to know what the how they actually ended up getting that done and getting all of those guys together, because I don't think it was done backstage at an arena. You know what I mean? It looks like it was done in either a studio or, because it's still real to me, damn it, at a poker game. Where they, we saw a minute of it, but then these four main eventers of all main eventers sat down and played cards together, and they played a poker game. I'd love to know who won. Maybe we find out at WrestleMania. Maybe that's the big reveal. But I think there were a couple very interesting things. Can you pull up the YouTube version of it so we get the full minute and we see the whole scope of it? Because I do think that, obviously this is a big deal promo, right? They teased it and they teased it. They teased it as if it was a storyline thing when it was a promo. They also, if I'm not mistaken, they debuted it on Pat McAfee's show, I think, which is, a big place to do it. It makes sense because where are we going to watch WrestleMania this year? ESPN, home of Pat McAfee. But yeah, I think let's watch it as Triple H walks in. I don't need audio on it, but you could just hit play. As Triple H walks in and he's doing that Triple H voiceover, which, by the way, I think some people are asking why Triple H is in the video. It's like, I mean, he's like the face of WWE and a Hall of Famer and one of the most famous wrestlers ever. So, I mean, that's kind of probably why.
The Dana White of WWE.
Yeah, but also if Dana White was also one of the most famous fighters
Very correct.
in the history of UFC.
Yes.
Like, don't forget, there's a lot of people that watch stuff like this and go, oh, that's awesome. Triple H, I love Triple H.
13-time world champion.
Yeah, that's the thing that people tend to forget. So Triple H walks in, he's looking, and so what's interesting about this is that as Triple H is walking in, and of course I'm breaking this down like I'm breaking down a show because everything counts. You're not going to tell me you're putting Lesnar, Punk, Roman, and Cody in a room together and everything doesn't count. Everything counts. So the way it's set up is that Cody, Punk, Brock, and Roman are all in that room together. So the first thing that you realize is this is going into 2026 WWE's top 4. This is their 4 guys. That is probably very reassuring for someone like Cody Rhodes, letting people know this is still the face. Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar. I mean, it's interesting because there's rarely been a time where you have this combination of current talent, legendary talent, full-time guys, part-time guys, like all kind of coming together all at the same time. And while I don't think that it has any bearing on what the actual WrestleMania matches are going to be, it is interesting to know where WWE sees their kind of main event people. Because if anything, I think if you're doing this promo, they're going, who are the faces that are going to sell tickets to this event? The purpose of the promo is to sell tickets to WrestleMania. So who are the faces that we are positioning as the faces that are going to sell tickets to this event? It's Cody, it's Punk, it's Roman, it's Lesnar. I think Cody and Roman are not a surprise at all. Roman would only be a surprise in the sense that he's in and out. Right? This would lead me to believe that Roman Reigns is not going to continue on this streak of opening shows, which, as you know, I have gotten sick and tired of Roman Reigns opening shows. Main event Roman Reigns. But this, him sitting at that table would lead me to believe that whatever's next for Roman Reigns is that kind of slightly longer, elevated storyline that we've been waiting for. It clearly indicates that we're not even somewhat done with Brock Lesnar. I think anybody wondering why Brock beat John Cena the way he did at WrestlePalooza, that is something that, to me, this promo answers. Because Brock Lesnar is positioned as a top-of-the-card WrestleMania main event guy. And you could sit there and go, well, listen, Brock is Brock. He wouldn't have lost anything if he had lost to John Cena. But that's not true. If Brock Lesnar loses to John Cena and the next time you see him is at the WrestleMania poker game where he's supposed to be intimidating to guys like Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, and CM Punk, that math doesn't math. If the rest of Cody Rhodes literally just beat John Cena at SummerSlam. So if they're looking at Brock Lesnar and going like, oh, it's the 4 of us here, it's like, no. Not if John Cena beat Brock Lesnar. It's a different deal. You know what I mean? There's the Brock Lesnar that main events WrestleMania, and there's the Brock Lesnar that's an attraction for WrestleMania. The Brock Lesnar, like WrestleMania 39 Brock Lesnar, is very, very different than WrestleMania 38 Brock Lesnar. Both of them serve a purpose to WrestleMania. But the difference between Brock main eventing with Roman and Brock having an attraction match with Omos is a vast difference. Both are important. Both are good. But this promo tells me that Brock is in that WrestleMania 38 space. Brock is in that main event space. That CM Punk ain't going anywhere. That CM Punk is going to continue. Now that, that story of I just want a main event WrestleMania was what we had building up to WrestleMania 41. that story continues on, and that Cody and Roman are both still people looking at this scene. Now, even looking at those four, when you go, if those are the four that are going to main event WrestleMania, we're not even talking about the women, because I think Rhea Ripley and Io Sky could easily main event one of the nights of WrestleMania, easily. But if it's like, okay, these are the four guys that are going to be in main events for WrestleMania, you could split them up in pretty much any way, right? You could tell me the story of Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar. Cody Rhodes, the last guy to beat Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar coming back to get revenge on Cody Rhodes. Maybe Brock Lesnar regrets raising Cody Rhodes' arm in the air a few years ago at SummerSlam. Maybe Cody Rhodes is the champion, and that's something that Brock Lesnar wants. Maybe Brock Lesnar wins the Royal Rumble. Whatever it is, you can get back to Cody versus Brock. Brock versus Roman is a forever match. You know what I mean? You could do that WrestleMania after WrestleMania. They main evented 31, 34, 38. They could easily do it again. And you know, I mean, you know, there are probably some Twitter accounts that would complain, but everybody's buying tickets to that. Brock Lesnar versus CM Punk is 100% something, a direction they could go in with the Paul Heyman of it all, which we'll get into when you look at Paul Heyman's behavior in this promo. But then you could say the same thing about any of those wrestlers. Cody Rhodes and CM Punk is one that we've been waiting for. CM Punk and Roman Reigns is 100% built in. It's a part of Roman Reigns' story that he's telling. You know, Roman and Cody. Roman and Cody is a forever match the same way Roman and Brock is a forever match. You could absolutely headline another WrestleMania with Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, and I don't think it would be a bad idea to do that. But any combination of the four guys at that table, you could easily tell a story with. Here's the other thing. Paul Heyman showing up there and being elevated to the point that it's like we're only having, if you look at what's at this table, where this promo was obviously very important to the powers that be at WWE. I would imagine that's the feeling that I get watching this. You know, Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, they barely do shows. They got Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns to shoot a poker scene promo. Like, that's massive. So clearly this promo was meant to be massive, and these superstars were meant to be massive stars in the promo. So, you know, this idea that not only do you have your four top guys that are selling tickets to WrestleMania, but you're like, Paul Heyman should be there too. That is the rare air that Paul Heyman now sniffs. All we've got is Brock Lesnar, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, Triple H. Paul Heyman belongs in that circle. That's a huge statement to make about Paul Heyman. And it's really interesting to me. It's fun. And it's not specific about storyline beats, but it is specific about who these characters are. This is a subtle thing, but I loved it. Triple H is looking over the shoulder of Brock Lesnar, who's kind of, the way it's positioned, sat in a line. This is not on the poster, in the promo. Sat in a line with Cody, Roman, Punk, and then Brock. Triple H is watching what the four stars are doing. Paul Heyman is watching what Triple H is doing. The implication there being that Paul Heyman already has his plan. Whatever Paul Heyman is doing is already laid out. Paul Heyman is not watching how these stars are behaving because Paul Heyman has accounted for that, right? Paul Heyman is watching what Triple H decides to do. And then you get into it and you go down the table and you're like, Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman guy. CM Punk, Paul Heyman guy. Roman Reigns, Paul Heyman guy. And I mean, Cody Rhodes, what has he always called him? Mr. Heyman. Who was the guy that let Paul Heyman into those booking rooms early on? Dusty Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is a 1 degree removed Paul Heyman guy. All four of those stars, the biggest stars, the four biggest stars in the industry and four of the biggest stars ever are all connected in this moment as well as forever to Paul Heyman, which is a wild, wild thing to consider, right? That Paul Heyman has one foot in this what's tomorrow, what's coming next, which is Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. But this other foot is firmly planted in This is what the industry is. This is, I mean, listen. If you wanted to put together a Mount Rushmore of current wrestling, this is at least an argument. I'm not saying this is it. I'm saying this is an argument. Brock, Cody, Roman, Punk. I also think that if you're wanting to create a visual for what is the WWE going into 2026, the fact that John Cena is not going to be around in 2026, the fact that it's okay, they had a massive 2024, they had a massive 2025. So what is 2026 going to look like? This would really be the first taste of it. And I mean, it really is a strong visual. Those guys sitting around that table is a really strong visual, not just for them, but for how much is going on in the WWE. And also, how big they plan on WrestleMania being perceived, right? I think that's important. How big they plan on WrestleMania being perceived. And I'll tell you what I do like, right? Because there are people that are like, hey, why don't you have some of the women at that table? And I don't think that's unfounded. I think there's a space at that table for someone like a Rhea Ripley. I think there's a space at that table for someone like a Becky Lynch. I could even argue there's a space at that table for someone like a Liv Morgan who has broken through. I absolutely think that there's space at that table for those superstars. But you know who's not at that table? And I don't want to say I'm happy about it because that feels negative. There's no Logan Paul at that table. There's no Jelly Roll at that table. There's no Bad Bunny at that table. There's no celebrities that have come into wrestling. These are stars created within the landscape of WWE. This is the star power that is possible within the world of professional wrestling. And I thought that was really interesting to take a look at, too. I mean, I think the whole thing is interesting. The fact that this much effort went into making the thing, the fact that this much effort went into promoting the thing, and there are people that I've heard say, because of course there are going to be people that are annoyed that it's a promo and not like a somebody debuting or something that lends itself to television. That's always going to be the case. And that's not unfounded either. To be annoyed that this doesn't result on something on television is, I think, fully understandable and also had to be expected that could happen based on all the sort of hype that was around this thing. But realistically, the take on that, which is, they didn't have to hype it up like this. They could have just dropped the promo. Yeah, but then it would have just been a promo. You know what I mean? Like whether people were annoyed or not, clearly they wanted to build to this WrestleMania promo. Clearly they wanted to build a buzz around it. Clearly they wanted everyone to notice it. They didn't want it to go under the radar. They didn't want it to feel like just another WrestleMania promo. And maybe to some people it still does. But I think that's the difference. That's why if you go, well, they could have just dropped it. They didn't have to tease it like that. And that's true. They clearly could have done that. But then it would have just been another promo. You wouldn't have had that tease. You wouldn't have had that energy around it. And I think that would have been a mistake if that's how they want this to be perceived. And also, this, level of importance that you got these 6 people in a room together to shoot this. That's a wild, wild thing to consider. When was the last time Brock Lesnar did promo? When does Brock Lesnar do promo? Can you imagine? When he shows up to a show, you're like, what? Brock Lesnar is here? You know he's a WWE superstar, but just being on the television show, you're like, huh? Brock's here? The idea that he's doing promo? That's crazy. Interesting time, man. Interesting time, but that is the reveal. That's what the shoes were all about. The fact that WrestleMania 42 is coming to Vegas, and that's why they're back in the saddle again. Steven Tyler said it himself. Because the saddle in this case would be Las Vegas, Nevada. And what a saddle it is.